Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining today. This is a discussion today about system integrators. As many of you know, system integrators and choosing the right system integrator or implementer for your technology is arguably just as important, maybe even more important than the actual technology you choose. And so, what we're going to do today in today's show is recognize some of the industry's leading system integrators, not based on our opinion, but based on actual data from customers that have used these system integrators. So, this is going to be a fun shout out recognition sort of discussion today for some of the leading and highest rated system integrators in the marketplace. And what we hope you'll take from today is an understanding of what to look for when you're evaluating potential system integrators, as well as who some of the leading system integrators are, just getting a sense of who some of the market players are, the leading highest rated ones are, and really just give you some context and some things to think about as you're out evaluating your potential system integrators for your digital transformation. So really looking forward to today's discussion, looking forward to introducing our guest here in just a moment, who's going to help us unpack this in a lot more detail. Just to get started, though, a quick introduction for myself. I'm Eric Kimberly. I'm the CEO of Third Stage Consulting, and we are an independent and tech agnostic consulting firm that helps clients with their digital transformations. And I'm also part of Lander Talent. We do ERP and IT staffing for organizations as well. So any sort of consulting or staffing help you need with your ERP, digital transformation, or IT needs, you can reach out to myself, and I can discuss with you either one of those companies with you. We are going to take audience questions today. So any questions you have about system integrators, your experiences with system integrators, things you look for, pitfalls you've fallen into, anything like that, we'd love to hear your comments and any questions you have about how to evaluate some of these system integrators. So I'd love to hear your feedback and thoughts as we go through the conversation. Also, we're watching the chat here across all the platforms we're streaming to here today. So any questions you have, I'm going to keep an eye on it. In fact, just to prove that this is live and to get you guys talking, hopefully, I'd love to hear from you all what city and country you're joining from today. We tend to draw in people from all over the world, so it's always fun to see where everyone is joining from today. So city and country, if you don't mind, just drop it in the chat to get us going here today. And helping me unpack this conversation around system integrators, how to select them, who the best rated ones are. Bonnie Tinder from Raven Intelligence. Bonnie, thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
So you've been on this podcast a few times before. You and I have known each other a long time in this industry, and I would consider you a fellow maverick / renegade / disruptor in the industry, because you're doing something that in some ways is so crazy, but in other ways just so common sense-ish that no one had thought to do it until you did it. And that is to start a peer review website and a service for companies that are looking for system integrators and vendors. Tell us a little bit about Raven Intel, and maybe also tell us, like, how did you come up with this idea? Why'd you do it? What led you down this path?
Yeah, well, thank you for that. And we think about our buying experience as consumers, out on Amazon, and if you're buying a $2 item, you are reading reviews. You're selecting a restaurant, it's particularly in a town that you might not be familiar with, you're looking at Yelp. So much of our consumer buying habits are based upon peer review. And yet, when we look at these multi-million-dollar complex projects that so many parts of the business hinge upon, prior to Raven, there was no way to really look and vet a partner. And so, 8 years ago, I started Raven Intelligence with this idea that I wanted to make it as easy to find a great partner as it is to find a great pizza spot or buy a good item on Amazon. And the difference is on Amazon, you can easily return your item if you don't like it. But it's much less of a return policy for a botched implementation. And we're talking about millions of dollars, not a couple of dollars. So it's a really important area to really make sure that you are selecting the right partner, because Eric, as you mentioned, and as you see day to day, your partner is, and the team that you put in place is going to make or break your implementation and technology success.
So it's such an interesting thing, and it's funny to think about a return policy. What's your return policy for my digital transformation services? Do you have an exchange policy? It's funny to think about. But
Yeah.
why do you think that is? Like, why it is fascinating to think about how we can be buying a book for $10 and we obsess over reviews and comparing different books. But to your point, you spend millions of dollars on a system integrator, and sometimes you believe the marketing hype and you go for it. Why? What do you think that is? Is that a organizational behavior sort of thing? Is it overconfidence? What causes that? Do you think, just based on your experience?
Yeah. Well, when you're buying a partner or consulting work, you're really buying something that's difficult to touch and feel, right? You're buying hours, you're buying expertise. Whereas even with the software, you can put a box around what the software does. It's easy to demonstrate software. It's much more difficult to demonstrate a finished project, especially be in the early stages of things. And so this idea that, well, I spent $1 million on my project and now it didn't meet expectations. The time has been invested, the resources have been invested, and it's very difficult to go back unless there's something, that's really obscure that happened that you can point to. You can't go back and undo. And that's why it makes it so important, Eric, to make sure that you're set up for success early. Or if you're early in a project and you spot those red flags that you're like, okay, we gotta change directions, like right now, like quit while we're ahead type of thing. You need to be able to quickly, course correct if for some reason the partner that you have is not going to be viable for the long haul.
Right. Right. And just out of curiosity, tell us a little bit about your background, your upbringing in the industry that led you to this point where you started Raven Intel. I think the same year I started Third Stage, right? 2018
Yeah.
is when you started Raven, because I think we were
Yeah.
comparing notes along the way as we were both getting started. But what led you up until 2018 when you started Raven Intel? What was your journey, and how'd you end up here?
Yeah. Well, I started out my career right out of college in implementation. The first job I had was implementing payroll for, at the time it was called Ceridian, now it's called Dayforce. And that was, and even in the 25 plus years that I've had in this industry, I look back, that still was the hardest job I ever had. Implementation is not for the faint of heart. It is a really tough road. On the other hand, it taught me a ton about how this whole implementation of software works and what was involved with it. That was the first parts of my career. I moved into other areas within the business and in marketing and sales. And so really got very acquainted working in these software vendors to see from a lot of different lenses what happens in that onboarding process, and where the customers were getting value or not value. In the late 2000s, I actually ran competitive intelligence for a software company. And that was really the point where I saw firsthand competitors that were failing, specifically in the ERP space with these massive implementations. And so I would do competitive intel, find all of these public failures, and have them, illustrated and talk about, why this software company was different than that on implementation. And what I realized is that the strength of implementations becomes a huge differentiator and a huge, I think, unique competitive trait if done well. And so I thought, hey, it's really hard to demonstrate when you do implementation well, because nobody, says thank you for getting it right. I wanted to give partners a way that they could define how they were doing implementation and show the success through the absolute best content that a company can have, and that is in the voice of their customers. And
Right.
so that's really what led me to start Raven in 2018 was, giving I wanted to give these SIs and software vendors a way to really prove out that they were doing a great job during implementation and have some like hard data in the voice of customers independently that would help them set themselves apart. From a competitive standpoint, I think it's the absolute, most important thing that a customer can make a decision on is tell me the success rate of other customers who have just gone through an implementation. That is a huge proof point as to what you're buying is going to be good or not.
Yeah. Yeah. That's super interesting. I have a follow-up question for you. I'm going to ask you in just a moment on that too. But I want to turn to the audience here, say hello to a few people that are joining. Patrick is joining on LinkedIn, says hello, and you are live in Poland. Hello, Patrick. Good to see you again. We have Lori joining from St. Paul in the U.S. Hello, Lori. Rob on LinkedIn from Atlanta. Thank you for
Rob.
You know some of these people. These names look familiar to you.
I do. Hi, Sue.
Sue from Wisconsin. Wow, you're bringing quite the fan base here to the show. Thank you.
I love it. All great implementers and titans in the tech industry. So glad to have them here.
Yeah, and we're going to tag more of these system integrators as we talk about them. We'll try to we'll tag them on LinkedIn and try and get them to jump in the conversation here as we give shout outs to some of them. Rashid from Morocco on LinkedIn. Thank you for being here today. I'd love to hear from the audience too. Just a quick question for the audience. I'd love to hear what you think the most important criteria is when you're thinking about a system integrator for your organization. What's the most important criteria? What are some of the pitfalls or lessons you've learned or things you look at when you're evaluating system integrators? I'd love to hear the feedback. So drop that in the chat. I'm going to come back to that here in just a moment to your responses on that. But Bonnie, you were talking about your journey and how you ended up starting Raven Intel, and you have an interesting background in competitive intelligence. And really, it seems like what you're doing is you're bringing some basic fundamental transparency to an industry that wasn't really raised on transparency. How did vendors and system integrators respond when you launched this platform in 2018, given that it wasn't a thing? This wasn't like just another peer review site. There wasn't any at the time. Were people open to it? Did they like it? Did they push back on it? Did it make them uncomfortable because they couldn't control the narrative? Like, what was the response you got from the industry in general?
Well, my first year, most people wanted to run the other way.
Right.
Frankly, oh, you want to review implementation? Great. Okay. Talk to you later.
No thanks.
So I would say the first reception was very cold, especially from the big GSIs and honestly the global software vendors as well. Initially, they were like, "Hey, we got that covered. No need to dig into our data here. We're our customers." And so I think initially that was it was a tough road. And so rather than going to the SIs themselves or the software vendors to say, "Hey, can you introduce me to your clients?" what we did is we just went straight to the clients. I mean, the clients were the ones who, had a story to tell. They were the ones who, would be very forthcoming in terms of giving us reviews. And so our first, what I would say, our first 500 reviews were based on, our own guerrilla marketing tactics to just go straight to these software shows, talk to clients, with our, investigative hat on and get that feedback. Ours is an open site, so anybody can come in and write a review. Do we have to vet who is writing it? Of course, we don't post anything without knowing exactly who and vetting the company that is writing the review. But with that said, anybody at any time can come in and write a review. We're not gatekeeping any of the data. We don't lose reviews or anything like that. So our best data initially came directly from clients and also doing all of the hard work and going directly to them and just asking them, "Hey, would you write a review?" However, all of a sudden in like year two, we had some of the very best SIs who really got it and understood the value of showcasing their customers on the site. They knew that it was easy for them to find great reviews, and they knew that was going to set them apart. So all of a sudden, we had some early adopters who, and some of them are actually on this call right now. Some of the SIs that were independent, doing an amazing work for their clients that were running toward it. And I always say you can spot a great SI from a mile away because they're the ones who are leaning toward transparency and toward getting customers to review them versus the ones who say, oh, well, we want to protect our clients, or oh, we do advisory work, so we can't get our clients to do reviews. I mean, it's a bunch of excuses as to why they can't get reviews. But I think that's just a mask for we're afraid what customers will actually say, and
Yeah.
we don't want that public. So again, where we really started getting some great momentum is we found all of these SIs that were, and software vendors too, right? That really understood how powerful the voice of customers were, and were not bashful about getting their customers out and talking about their experience, because they knew overwhelmingly that it's positive. So shout out to the UKGs, the Dayforces, the the Unit 4, the smart communications, right? Some of these vendors that were building ecosystems that wanted to showcase the great work their partners were doing, and were not afraid of transparency, because quite frankly, they knew that their clients were satisfied.
Yeah. Yeah. Very interesting. Yeah. And so you trigger a couple of questions, or jog a couple thoughts in my head that I want to come back to in just a moment. Let me get to a couple audience things here real quickly too. LinkedIn, someone on LinkedIn, I don't see the names, says hello from Colorado, a fellow Coloradoan. I'm in Colorado as well, in Denver. And then I know, Bonnie, you didn't say this, but you're in Chicago. And here's a comment from someone who I know lives in Chicago. You should know, you two should know each other if you don't already. This is from Carmen on LinkedIn. Carmen says, this is why governance and guardrails is important. Love that you have a way to help clients deep dive into their own data, help them understand how their investments are being managed. And I assume it helps the vendors just as much, maybe even more. It might help the vendors, because now they get to see what do people think of our services. We have our own view, but what are they saying about us?
Well, and it's surprising how much during implementation the vendor does not really know, because it's not that they're not involved or not communicating with the client, but there's a lot of information that happens, especially from a sales perspective. You turn that account over to account management and to the implementation team. It's not that you're not wanting to be involved, but like after post sale, you're not intimately aware of what's going on. And this is a way for them to, in a very independent way, make sure that, what the partners are delivering is quality work, because that reflects their brand as much as their software does.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. Also want to say hello to Ken on LinkedIn, joining from North Carolina. Sanjay, I'm joining on LinkedIn, says, good morning, all. Good morning, Sanjay. And then Patrick on LinkedIn has a comment here. He says, in our program, and he's got a website here. In our program, we started to collect users' experience and reviews about published ERP systems, especially popular in Poland, which is where Patrick is from. It's difficult to convince users to share their opinion. How do you verify, and how do you enhance users to share true opinions, not hate?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I think that's the tough thing about reviews. And you probably know this just from the way that you write them. If you have an amazing experience, you're going to quickly write about that. If you have a terrible experience, you're going to quickly write that. If it's like, if you're sort of neutral on it, and that's like, maybe in the 6 to 8 out of 10 range, I mean, you're not as likely to do a review, because you're just like, eh. And so it's finding the broad sampling of information from the promoters down to the detractors, but also what's in between as well, because that gives you a real look at what the quality is. In general, is having the volume of reviews. And Patrick, you bring up the thing that is the most challenging thing about the reviews business is incenting a client to take 5 minutes to do a review. And so ways that we, or how should I say, ways that is, we increase the odds of that is when somebody who knows them and has a relationship with them is the one who asks them to do the review. And that is primarily the consultants. And so we have a lot of SIs that are part of the Raven program who actually bonus their consultants based on the number of reviews that they get, as well as the quality, right? So that puts skin in the game for the consultants to make sure those reviews are complete. And when a consultant who's intimately aware of the experience during an implementation, when they're the ones doing the asking, the client is like 90% more likely to respond, as opposed to when it comes from some marketing email address, or definitely from Raven Intel that they may have not been familiar with. So the likelihood goes way up when it's the consultants asking the question, because there's something in it for the consultant to get reviewed. I mean, even incentives aside, consultants can use reviews to basically show the quality of work that they're delivering for clients. So getting skin in the game is a huge deal. And what does not work, number one is some spray and pray email from a marketing email address that, would you write a review? No, nobody does those. And then the second thing that it maybe works a little bit of the time, but we don't encourage it, is to bribe the client to do a review with like Amazon gift cards and things like that. First of all, it always goes to spam anyways. But the last thing that you want is like some paid for opinion. Nobody wants to read that. And so, I would say that, that's less of how our customers are coming to it. The last thing I do want to talk about this, because this is a big thing, especially in the world of AI, is how do you verify reviews? And that's a really important question. Every single review that we do has to have a work email address. We have to verify that work email address, so we don't do Gmails or something like that. And then we cross-reference that against LinkedIn as well before we can post anything. We do not post any of that PII data or anything like that, but we know every single review that's on our site.
That's great. Yeah, very good. And to the audience too, if you don't mind, keep the questions coming. I'm going to turn away from the questions from you just for a moment, because I want to get to some of Bonnie's categories here. But keep the questions coming, because there's some really good ones coming through the chat that I am going to get to here in just a moment. But before I do that, maybe Bonnie, if you could tell us, I know you and I have chatted about this in the past, and it's always good to get an update on the state of the market and the state of the industry year to year. And you have some broad observations based on some of the patterns you're seeing just across the board in general with the data. And so before we get into some of the highest rated system integrators, which is, as I assume, a big part of what some people are waiting for us to get to here today, tell us a little bit, before we get to that, tell us a little bit about what are some of the general patterns that you saw in the data over the last year?
Yeah. So number one, high satisfaction correlates with high consultant quality. So if somebody, and one of the questions we ask, did you get the full value of what you thought with this project, right? Full value, that definitely correlates to a high satisfaction with, or high consultant quality. So how the consultant was rated, there's a correlation there. And not surprisingly, the people and the team dynamic are what I would say are number one telltale sign of a good consultant team, and your ability to realize value, right? Because they're going to be the ones that will help you through the change management that's so critical. They're the ones that you feel that, is responsive to your needs, is listening, all of those type of things. So it's a people equation, but there's a huge correlation between a firm that's getting a 4.8 or 4.9 out of 5 rating in consultant quality and the success that's delivered.
Right, right.
And number two, I would say execution reliability is a differentiator. And, on time, on budget, while it doesn't, correlate, one-on-one to value delivered, it's important, right? Because typically firms who can deliver within the scope that was agreed upon are the ones that really can separate themselves. They're the ones who have scoped out the project correctly. They're the ones who put those sort of guardrails around the project, as opposed to going in knowing, oh, well, this time frame is going to change, 4 or 5 times, as our change orders that we're going to, make all of our money on. So execution reliability is the differentiator. It is not everything, right? But if somebody is consistently delivering, half of the time on time, half of the time on budget, that's typically is spotting other failures as well.
Right. Very interesting.
Yeah, and I would say number 3 is scale matters, but consistency matters more. And we give extra credit to the SIs that have a volume of reviews. And we have some firms, shout out to 𝗦𝗦𝗢𝗥𝗔𝗧𝗢𝗥, 472 reviews, Ascend 309 reviews, Civility, 250 or so reviews. The consistency that they have demonstrated through a quantity of different types of project is huge, right? Because scale matters, but consistency over time matters more. And those that have built up years and years worth of data with consistently high volume is impressive. It is more impressive than the ones that are 5-star with only 4 or 5 reviews. Those, to me, like, anybody can do that. It's the consistency. When you have 100+ reviews out there, that's a body of work that now is there's a methodology behind those reviews.
Right. Yeah. I wonder, I'd be curious to hear from the audience if you're surprised that the big names don't always rate the highest, because I think that's what you're saying too, is sounds like you want a blend of the best of both worlds, if you will. You want a partner in an organization that can scale with consistent, repeatable quality, but at the same time, it sounds like the hugest ones aren't necessarily the ones to do that most consistently. They might be able to deliver more projects, but I imagine their success rate, you get some diminishing returns there, I assume. Is that true? Or how would you compare like the bigger firms with the biggest firms? How would you compare like the quality or just the general patterns you see between them?
Yeah, there is absolutely zero correlation between name brand and success. So GSIs that, everybody knows, Big 6, Big 7, you've heard their name because they advertise at the airport. They're the ones who sponsor the rock band at your vendors' conferences. There is no correlation there between that brand and a consistency rate of success that we see in the reviews. And quite frankly, some of them are the ones who really shy away from getting reviewed because they don't want that customer experience seeing the light of day in a lot of cases.
Right. Good. Well, let's get into some examples then. You've pulled out some of the leading system integrators, the ones that have the highest ratings, and the most consistent, broadest rating. So you're not looking at SIs that maybe had 1 or 2 reviews that are 5-star. You're looking for the ones that had some substance and some repeatability, I guess you'd say.
Yeah, we can't even give metrics to firms that have less than 7 reviews. I mean, it just doesn't until they hit that magic number of 7 that we can't reliably come up with metrics for them. However, once they hit that, and the firms that we have are, there's a baseline of 30 reviews that we have before any of these can even get a mention. It's that consistency, as I mentioned before, that we can confidently say, hey, we recommend these firms. And I want to make sure that, when I talk about these firms, awards are so difficult. They are so difficult because it really depends. I can't just give a single award for an SI. I mean, that would be like, it doesn't make sense because it's based on what industry, based on
geography,
geography, based on what software, based on what scope of project. Do you need managed services afterwards? So that's difficult to say. So I've alphabetized these. Please know that they're alphabetized. These are not in order of how, of anything other than alphabetical by name.
All right.
But let's start out. Let's start out with an A, Ascend, right? So this is a UKG focused powerhouse offering both client-side and consultant-led implementation. The data reflects deep specialization. They have over 300 reviews. They're at 309 right now. So kudos for that volume and consistency over time. They have a 9.7 out of 10 partner satisfaction. Their systems expertise 4.9, consultant quality of 4.9 as well. And they really combine specialization with scale and volume, which you can see here. So Ascend, awesome choice for UKG, particularly with client side as well. Like lots and lots of client side work that they've done. The second one, and Eric, do you want me to keep going?
Yeah, let me ask you a couple questions there then. So and this goes back to the comment you just made right before you got into the discussion here of Ascend. You were saying that it'd be impossible to say, who are the best ones or the best one, because there's so many different categories and subcategories you'd have to look at in terms of software, geography, industry, et cetera, et cetera. Where would you say in this case? So if I'm looking at Ascend and I know I'm implementing UKG, where would they be a best fit? Like, could you give us an example of how, like, what category or what box would I fall into that would say Ascend would probably be a really good fit for me, other than implementing UKG?
Yeah. So, I mean, their specialization is in mid-market. It's with workforce management. It's with, if you need client-side resources, as well as the ability to, handle complexity, especially, within the mid-sized enterprise. They're a great bet there.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Okay. All right. So that's
North America.
North America. Okay.
Yep.
All right. So congratulations to Ascend being one of the top rated ones here. And I'm tagging, and I'll drop in the chat here the names in case you miss it. I'll try to keep up here as we're going through it, just to drop in the chat for you.
You can read, by the way, any that I'm mentioning, you can read all of their reviews out on ravensIntel.com and just look them up, and don't take my word for it. Take their customers' word, and you can see all of the reviews right there.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because Ken from LinkedIn said he joined a few minutes late. And where do we find the reviews? And that's probably something I should have asked you in the intro. It's ravensIntel.com, right? RAVEN.
Yep. And you can search my software ecosystem and go or by any of these partners' names.
And this is all free data, by the way, right? I can go out there and just review it. I don't have to pay you to go see the data.
Not at all. Not at all. This is designed for a software buyer who's looking to implement.
Yeah, interesting. Very cool. Okay, so we talked about Ascend. Who's next on your list of
alphabetical? 𝗓𝗏𝗧𝗘. 𝗓𝗏𝗧𝗘 brings cross-platform depth across ecosystems like Dayforce, as well as UKG. They offer advisory services as well as full implementation services. They do workforce software as well. So they handle multiple streams of HCM software. What distinguishes them is scale, right? They have the most reviews out on Raven Intel, 472, which is the highest volume, with consistently positive satisfaction scores as well. So they're with that many reviews, 9.6 satisfaction score. They are 76% on time, 80% on budget, which is well above our industry average, which hovers around like 60%. They are 4.9 in consultant quality. So where 𝗓𝗏𝗧𝗘 is really best suited is, to come in, especially if you are early in the process and not sure what software that you are choosing. They can offer advisory services as well as the implementation as well. So 𝗓𝗏𝗧𝗘.
Very cool. So just to understand here, one thing that stood out here is you were talking about the verified reviews, and just the fact that you've got 472 is impressive. And you've got some quantitative data here, which is super helpful. If I were to go in, if I were to go into your site in general and look at some of the individual comments that people make, do you have certain themes, like qualitatively, that sort of jump out as far as what people are saying and thinking and talking about when they leave these reviews?
Yeah, we do. And so we ask the customer to talk about the strengths of the partner, how they chose their partner, as well as would they hire this partner again? Are they highly likely to do that? Are they likely, or will they shop around? And so consistently, the rehire rate of 𝗓𝗏𝗧𝗘 is extremely high. and several of these customers, we see repeat projects. So we may have gotten a review 2 years ago from a customer that has now done a new module implementation or needs optimization help. They'll rehire a partner, and that rate of rehire is a significant calling card for a great consulting firm. And
Right.
again, we every quarter with these SIs that actually work and partner with Raven, we will consultatively interpret their voice of customer and tell them, here's where you're strong, here's where you have some opportunities, and here what your customers are saying your value prop is. And so we analyze all this data and give it back to these firms so that they know where they're outperforming as well.
Right. Right. Okay. Well, that's helpful. So we talked about 𝗦𝗏𝗧𝗘𝗠𝗦. We talked about Ascend.
Mhm.
Who else is amongst the highest rated SIs?
Another H, 𝗦𝗪𝗔𝗦𝗪 Solutions, now an Argonaut company. They were recently purchased last year. 𝗦𝗪𝗔𝗦𝗪 has built a reputation as a leader with the UKG healthcare vertical. They have managed successfully many healthcare implementations of great size and complexity. They're the go-to in this area. And their numbers are compelling. 9.8 partner satisfaction, 9.5 project satisfaction, 8.9 software satisfaction, among the highest in this cohort. And typically we see, partners are rated more favorably than the software vendors in most cases. It's just sort of the nature of the beast. And but consistently 𝗦𝗪𝗔𝗦𝗪, even with that challenge, is rating 8.9 software satisfaction. So they're really able to help overcome any, hiccups or any challenges with the software as well, which is great. 81% of the time they're on budget. They have 67 reviews, and they really have demonstrated incredibly strong execution in complex healthcare environments. So I would say those were the differentiators.
Very interesting. Very cool. Well, congratulations to 𝗦𝗪𝗔𝗦𝗪 for high ratings there. I'm going to save the next one for a second because I think, and you can correct me when we get to it, I think the next one you're going to go to, because I did see a leaked copy of Bonnie's list, by the way, so I know what she's going to say next.
Yeah.
I know which one she's going to get to next. I think that might be the biggest one, the biggest name on the list. Is that true? I don't want you to say it yet, but just to build the suspense, is that one of the biggest or one of the bigger names on the list?
It is the bigger, it's a bigger name because they offer a full breadth of solutions outside of implementation.
Okay. So big name SI did make the list, and we're going to talk about that in just a moment. But in the meantime, let me get to a couple more questions here because there's been a lot of really good ones here. Here's a question that builds on something Patrick asked earlier. He's either Patrick or Ken, I can't remember. One of the audience members asked a similar question, but Sue on LinkedIn says, how do you make sure you have a balanced review and not only positioning the good reviews?
Yeah, Sue, it's a great question. And we always say, if we do not have any reviews with negativity, somebody's hiding something, right? Or we just don't have enough of a quantity, because implementation, as Sue knows from her experience with implementation, it's a no matter what, and even the best of times, it's challenging. So how do we look at a balanced scorecard and not just the positive, right? We ask about, were there integrations which were problematic? What were the lessons learned? So that's a big question, lessons learned. We don't ask, what was positive? We ask what's this partner strengths, but we also ask what's the lessons learned. And that becomes then a place where you really get that free form emotion that comes out with clients. And if they have a bone to pick, boy, that's where we're going to see it, is the quote unquote lessons learned.
Right. Very interesting. Here's another question. I think you already alluded to this a bit, but we'll ask it again. This is from Ken on LinkedIn. Is there a top 10 list of most successful system integrators? I think that's what a lot of us want. We just want to be able to say, just tell me who the best one is.
Right. Exactly. Magic wand. Again, that top 10 would have to depend, right?
Yeah.
Depend on the software, depend on the scope of work, depend on your industry. So sure, there's always a top 10, but you got to have context on that.
Right. And here's an interesting comment that I really like. I'd be curious to get your feedback on this, Bonnie. This is from Precious on LinkedIn. Precious says, "Greetings from Ghana." And she talks about business process understanding. "Given my background in ERP and process transformation, I will advise you to evaluate business process understanding if they can challenge business assumptions intelligently." And this brings up a bigger point, even beyond what she's saying here. This is a great point because she's not talking about technology. She's not talking about how well does the partner understand technology, but how important is that operational understanding, the change management, the training, all the stuff that's not directly related to the technology. How important is some of the stuff that Precious is talking about here?
Yeah. It's a huge part of the equation, right? Because if you don't know how to ask questions and land on how can I help my client rethink a process, all of the great technical expertise is irrelevant. So you got to have both. And I think you see that demonstrated with, when vendors or at the SI, sorry, that get high marks. There's a couple of things that really demonstrate the process transformation expertise. And that is, the questions about what was the implementation process like? Was there change management involved? And how was that, as well as the area of value delivered? So when somebody says they got full value delivered, chances are the, the overall business process was handled effectively as well.
Right. Here's another question from 𝗦𝗬𝗦𝗦𝗦𝗦𝗦𝗦𝗦𝗦𝗦𝗦𝗦𝗦𝗦𝗦𝗦𝗦𝗦𝗦𝗦𝗦𝗦𝗦𝗦𝗦𝗦𝗧 "Pre-project implementation engagement with clearly defined requirements is a key for successful project delivery rather than just diving in without doing due diligence. Clear requirements, sound business case are very important."
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And we asked the question, how many change orders did you have? And that's the telltale. They had multiple change orders because a SI missed, needs during the scoping process or during the discovery process. That's the telltale that somebody just, rushed through to get a quote done.
right. Absolutely. And then here's a question from Darian on LinkedIn. "What statistical thresholds are needed before drawing conclusions about an SI?" I know you said, 7 is a magic number to prove you've got scale and repeatability. Are there any other statistical thresholds you look at without getting all statistically nerdy on us or anything?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that 7 is a big deal, but then we look at all the telltale markers of success, right? And when we ask a customer to review a project, it's not just a 30-second, 1 out of 5 stars. Although, man, that would make our job really easy. I mean, we have, close to like 60 questions that we're looking at the answers for to draw a conclusion about that. So when we have 7 customers who have gone through an implementation, that gives us not just 7-star ratings, it gives us, hundreds of points of context that we can really look at what the voice of customers are. I would say, our peer reviews, can you determine if a SI is right just based on reading reviews on Raven? No, I wish. That'd be nice. That would make it a lot easier for people to make decisions, right? You also have to really go with some of the things that you can't put a box around or data around. And that is, how well do you feel this consulting firm matches your culture internally? Can you work with this team? Do you like this team? Would you go ahead and have a beer with this team? If you can't, if you don't like them, it's not going to get better during implementation. And so I think statistically, you want to look at past history, and reviews are a great way to do that. But you still have to run an RFP or a selection process that gives you, you got to kick the tires and really know who your team is going to be, that you can't read from, some reviews.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Ken on LinkedIn asked, "Do you ask those people process side questions in the surveys?" So
Yes.
beyond their knowledge of technology and some of the other things you've talked about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Implementation process is one of them. Was there change management involved with the engagement, as well as consultant quality, which, also talks about and recognized consultant as well. So we ask for a name. So when somebody is named as the recognized consultant, chances are that person delivered some really, really great things.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Ken, as a follow-up on LinkedIn, says they all seem to know how to plug the light bulb in. We want to know which ones best understand how the business rooms need to be lit for optimal business outcomes.
Mhm.
Very well said, Ken. So thanks for
Mhm.
that.
I like that.
Yeah. All right. So I interrupted you, Bonnie. You were in the middle of going through the highest rated SIs, and I stopped you mid list here. But
Yep.
who's next on our list here?
Okay, so you teed it up, Eric. So RSM, and they really stand out for the breadth of services that they offer. So they implement UKG, Dayforce, Workday, Microsoft Dynamics. They have a practice area that spans multiple types of projects and multiple software, while also delivering tax assurance and advisory service that are beyond the HR tech as well. So they sort of do it all. In addition to the advisory, what they're getting on the implementation quality is also incredibly high. So delivery sits at 73% on time, 76% on budget, supported by 4.9 out of 5 ratings in consultant quality and responsiveness. They have 158 reviews, so they've demonstrated consistency over time. Their Dayforce practice is really firing on all cylinders as well. I think their biggest differentiator is the enterprise level scale that they have and the ability to do multiple types of advisory work as well as the implementation.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good. They had a lot of reviews, very high ratings, which is impressive. To your point earlier, I know you said 7 is the magic number, but some of these guys that you're talking about here have hundreds. They're in the hundreds. And I think that's very impressive to show that
Yeah.
it's not just a flash in the pan or just the happiest customers necessarily that are they're putting in reviews.
Yeah.
Do you just out of curiosity, like it came to mind actually when you were talking about H Architect because they had almost 500 reviews. But do you find that the vendor supports and buy into the whole transparency in the review process? Is that a critical success factor for you getting the data you need and to get their customers to actually submit reviews? You were talking about relationships and how important that is to get the reviews, but do you just find that certain vendors are like, yeah, I'm in, I want to get as many customers as I can, and I'm going to help you get more reviews?
Yeah, for sure. And there's others that will say, oh yeah, we're all about reviews. And then, they will run the other way
Yeah.
as well, or just never call you back. So the best vendors and the best vendor partner ecosystems are the ones that are actually managing the partner quality using these external reviews. And it really does help when the vendor is on board with having the SIs getting reviewed. And in a lot of cases, these software vendors will look to us to say, for their annual partner awards, give us the Raven data and help us make the decision who these awards should go to. And that independence is a big deal. And so, I mentioned UKG on some of these. UKG is a software vendor that really wants to make sure their partners are delivering consistent quality. So they do look at all of these metrics and they do award based on this as well, which is a big deal. Dayforce is another one. We've seen other, pockets of, SAP success factors. And they're also embracing this concept as well. Smart communications, Unit 4. And so I think more and more software vendors, as soon as they learn, hey, this is a way that we can really showcase the great work that we're doing. This is not punitive in any sense. It really all of a sudden the light bulb goes off, and now all of the SIs want to participate in this because it really helps them showcase what they're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good. Okay. Who's next on the list here?
Okay, so we're down to S, Civility. Civility has delivered some of the strongest overall scores in the UKG ecosystem. So they also are focused on UKG implementations, and consistently we see 5-star reviews. With 230 reviews. Again, they have a 9.9 partner satisfaction. which is the highest in this group. And you talk about repeat customers and repeat success. That's what we see consistently from Civility. They are 83% on budget, which is, almost 20% higher than the industry average. 4.9 on all qualitative execution metrics. And that is things like consultant quality, responsiveness, implementation process, as well as the software expertise. So, again, it's the consistency and it's the high degree of ratings. I always, tell them, hey, get some bad reviews in here, because this is too good. But on the other hand, it's hard to find a customer who has had any negativity there. So Civility, huge player within the UKG partner ecosystem in North America, both across core HR as well as workforce management.
What's interesting about Civility and some of the other ones you mentioned is how the partner satisfaction can be so high when the software satisfaction isn't bad. 8.6 software satisfaction isn't terrible, but it's just interesting to see. And to your point, I mean, you can have a successful, positive experience with an SI, even if you don't like the software as much as you like the partner. And it seems like, I don't know if you've seen that before. Or have you seen a disconnect between software satisfaction and then the actual implementation satisfaction?
Oh, for sure. I mean, we see all the time where we see the partner rated like a 9 and the software vendor rated a 6 or sometimes a 0. Right? If it was a really rocky implementation with a client saying, "Hey, we would have disbanded this project if it weren't for the partner." We've also seen the inverse as well, where the software is rated well, but the partner is rated poorly the first time around. And then we see some projects that were, retreads. And so they go from one SI to another SI, and the second SI gets high ratings and said, is then, the reason that the project was successful in the end. So we see a lot of that as well.
Yeah. The other thing too, and this is just more for the audience's edification, is, on the surface, if you look at some of these on time and on budget percentages, a lot of these that we've talked about so far are in that, 70 to 80% on time, on budget range. And on the surface, you think, wow, that's, it could be better, right? You could be a lot better. But actually those numbers are exceptionally high, I would say. I mean, based on my experience, I'd say it's usually the opposite. Usually it's, for most SIs, if I were to just generalize with no data to back me, which is the exact opposite of what you do, Bonnie. But if I'm just speaking from experience, I would say it's probably the inverse. It would be the average on time, on budget, which would be like 70 to 80% are not on time or on budget across the industry. So, and again, don't quote me on that because I have no data to back it. But I think these numbers from what you're going through are extremely high, higher than you may even think on the surface here.
Yeah. Yeah. I would agree with that. And I would say, if we're looking at the averages for a full ERP implementation, not just HCM, if we look at and take out the reviews just for ERP, those plummet, like they're half.
Right. Yeah, good point. Yeah, if you're talking HCM versus full blown ERP, I imagine that's a great point of clarification. I would imagine those numbers look a lot different. Yeah. So we've got, and speaking of on time, on budget metrics, this next one you're going to get to has even higher on time, on budget percentages. So tell us about this next one on your list.
Yeah. So Talent Team is an SAP SuccessFactors SI. And what makes their projects even more unique is they are really focused on talent management and learning. Their delivery metrics lead this cohort. They're 9.7 in partner satisfaction, 86% on time, 87% on budget, with over 71 reviews. And their expertise is in Europe, although they've opened up a North American practice as well. But Talent Team, has really solid reviews, and particularly in talent management learning, performance and goals and things like that. They're a leader with SAP SuccessFactors.
Very good. Yeah, that's very, very impressive. And then last but not least.
Yes. So 𝗦𝗪𝗔, and 𝗦𝗪𝗔 is it stands out for their global expertise in payroll, and particularly in APJ, right? So Australia, New Zealand, they have that niche that is so important to look for if you are doing an implementation in that area of the world. I had a call with a customer from Australia, and they were very specific about looking for somebody that had a footprint and local boots on the ground in Australia. 𝗦𝗪𝗧 was an easy choice there. So they, rated really well by customers. I would recommend them particularly for, the payroll piece of things as well as the HR.
Yeah, very interesting. So when you look at all these leaders in the space, and I've tagged them all or mentioned them all in the comment below. And if you don't see them now, you'll see them shortly after this airs. But what are some of the common traits of the highest rated SIs? I think you alluded to a little bit of it as you're going through, but maybe just if you were to summarize, what are the things that make these the highest rated SIs?
Yeah, they scope realistically. So they say no when necessary. And they're also ones that aren't going to lose a relationship over a change order. And I think those are the SIs that really impress me, where they sort of have skin in the game as well and are flexible with as needs change, and they always do. So, but they scope realistically and they take the time to do a proper discovery. Number two, they avoid over customization, knowing that that's going to be costly to support over time. They're the ones who really help the customer think through any customization and help dissuade them from overly customizing their solution. They maintain continuity of key resources. So we look at the team churn numbers. How many times did the team turn over during the course of a project? We want to see low numbers there. If they're constantly, swapping in and out resources, that usually creates knowledge gaps, inconsistency, and customers hate that. So they're the ones who don't swap out resources. And they're certainly not the ones that bait and switch, with the experienced team during the sales process and then swap them in for the JV team once the deal closes.
Right.
And I think they're the ones who will help escalate risks early instead of hiding them. They're the ones who can help the customer know what they don't know about something that's going to snowball and be really painful if it's not addressed early. And so they will spot those risks. They'll mention them. They'll get them all on the table and make sure that, they address things before they snowball. So, I mean, they're really going to behave in general, just in general, best partners are behaving like partners and like an extension of the team of the customer and not order takers.
Very interesting. Okay, good. And then when you look at the lower rated engagements, which we didn't get to that today, and we're not here to bash on the lowest rated SIs, but when you look at SIs that didn't make the list, or maybe SIs that are outliers in the other direction without the strong positive reviews that you just went through, what are some of the warning signs or patterns or themes you see in those reviews?
Yeah. Senior team sells the deal, junior team delivers it, right? That's a pattern with the global SIs, where they will bring out the really senior, speakers for the sales process and then swap them out many times with offshore resources when they learn that they won the project. So that's a big thing, is just maintaining the consistency of team is not there. They underestimated the change management effort. They're sometimes the ones who want to be really cost competitive. And so they reduce the change management hours. And so their proposal looks less and a customer goes with it. And then all of a sudden they make up all the difference and more once the customer's in process. So change management is a big deal. Make sure that you pad your proposal with that, or pad your potential budget with enough money for change management. High consultant turnover mid-project. And this sometimes points to the firm itself churning out resources. Maybe they're laying people off. And you see that, now, right, in the dawn of AI, where it seems like every company is having layoffs. You want to make sure that your team isn't constantly being brought in and out. That is one of the biggest things that smells failure for or spells failure for these implementation projects, is when you have a project lead, both from the SI as well as the customer, that keeps on moving, because there's that cohesion is so important.
Right.
And I would say, the last thing is just a lack of clarity on roles between client and SI. So that communication clarity is important. What is your job? What is my job? What is the team's job? And being very clear on who does what, because when that is gray and then all of a sudden something doesn't get done, it's like, there's a finger pointing type of thing. That was not good expectations that were set up front. So it's the one that is able to really define clarity on who's who in the zoo and what they need to be doing during a project.
Right. Yeah. Very cool. And then lastly, just looking at broader patterns, then what are some of the ways that organizations can use this data that you have on your site to de-risk their overall transformation?
Yeah. I would say the voice of customers speaks volumes. See what other customers are saying. You're going to get references from the SI one-on-one that you're going to talk to and have a phone call with or a Zoom meeting with. And that's really good. That's really good. Ask them the hard questions, but you need more than one, and you need to find more than just what your SI or your vendor is giving you in terms of references. Because you don't want just the cherry pick stuff. Go out and read reviews, because that's a way to have those independently vetted for you, in addition to your own checking. Go to conferences and your local industry networking meetings. Ask other customers that are there about their experiences. Try and find, sometimes it's like a needle in a haystack, but find those one-on-one sidebar conversations, and get the feedback from other customers as well. And I would say, pure data does not replace due diligence, right? So you have to still do your own homework in terms of your selection process, but it certainly can help sharpen it. And so, it really use the reviews that are available to help validate your what your gut is telling you. Because if you feel, hey, this team really connects with my project and with my culture internally, and in addition to that, a whole bunch of other customers have been satisfied with them as well, that's the green light. Versus, hey, I don't see any reviews for this vendor, I've never heard of them, and they were just sort of so, but they're cheap. Let's just go with them, right? That's red flags all over the place. Or, hey, I've heard of this big company that's going to, promise the world and all of these great things about a digital transformation, but, I don't really have a good feeling for other customers' experience, because I haven't been able to get that. Red flags.
Right. Or I like these guys because they're telling me what I want to hear, not what I need to hear, which is another.
That's right. Or nobody got fired for choosing, big company, insert name here. And maybe nobody got fired, but their project wasn't successful either. So.
Yeah. And I would argue they actually did.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
But what's funny, or what's interesting is you're saying that is nobody ever got fired for hiring fill in the blank. I would say that that mentality would not apply to any of these, maybe RSM, just because they are a bit bigger and people use them for accounting too, which I think sometimes the accounting firms or the audit firms, I think, create this false sense of security that like, oh, they also do accounting and audit, or they are our auditors in some cases. So their practice over here that does ERP or HCM or whatever must be just as good. And that's not the case. But I would say, most of these names are not household names, the ones that you just talked about, these highest rated ones. Those, other than RSM, I don't know that a lot of people have heard of a lot of these guys.
No, and honestly, that's why I want to start this. That's why I started Raven, because nobody had heard of them, and and yet they were delivering amazing value, and customers were like thrilled with them. And it's like I wanted everybody to know about them. Maybe they didn't have the marketing dollars to sponsor the rock band, but they were the ones that just consistently delighted clients, and that's what you want to find.
Yeah,
big names don't mean anything.
Yeah, the ones that are below the radar, they're actually investing in delivering better, not bringing in.
1,000,000%, and you want to, it's easy to see I hate to say it, the old boys network, right? Still going strong, right? Where your salesperson is going to walk in the biggest vendor here. That's not the best way to select a partner. You want the partner that is going to be a good fit for you, because you're going to have to live with them day to day. And, not the one that just bought your sales rep the biggest, steak dinner or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, here's a comment that I think brings us all full circle and sort of puts a bow on everything you just said. And thank you for staying long, Bonnie. This is a great conversation. I always say we'll try to keep it around an hour, and here we are, we're past an hour, and we're already out of time. But this comment from LinkedIn is a really good one. It says, just a comment from one of the first questions or topics you covered, Eric. While recommendations and recognition from a global software vendor SI carry meaningful credibility and often considered by buyers, independent and candid customer reviews ultimately have greater influence. Organizations want to hear directly from their peers about real implementation experiences, what worked, what didn't, what value they got, etc. Most SIs can provide curated project references, but independent customer feedback offers a level of authenticity and transparency that buyers can, and then whoever it is ran out of space. So
they couldn't have written it better.
Yeah. I was like, how are you typing that comment and talking at the same time, Bonnie? I don't know how you had time to put that comment in, because it sounds like something.
It's Bonnie bot.
Right.
My AI.
Your AI agent is listening in and commenting on your behalf here. But that's a great comment. And I apologize, I can't see the name of the person who posted that on LinkedIn, but thank you for the great comment there. And that's a great place to leave it. So ravenintel.com is where we can go see your reviews, and you can search and sort, and you can look at all sorts of data there. How many, you might've said this before, and if you did, I apologize. I don't remember, but how many SIs or vendors are on your site that have reviews on your site? 200,
a little over 200. We have over 4,000 reviews to look at across 7 software ecosystems. So lots of data there.
Very cool. It's very interesting. Well, thanks for sharing some of these insights. I really appreciate it. And I encourage everyone here to go check out ravenintel.com. Follow Bonnie on LinkedIn. She's always putting great stuff out there. Great content that you sort of summarize a lot of this out in some of the thought leadership you publish. So I appreciate you sharing and being so transparent. Because I think, ultimately what you guys are doing is something this industry needs more of. I think one thing that as I get older, I get more and more jaded and grumpy about the fact that there just isn't a lot of transparency in this industry. And that's what creates a lot of the problems. It's a systemic breakdown in our industry, but people like you are changing that. So really appreciate you doing what you do at Raven. And thanks for being here today.
And thank you so much for giving us a platform to do that. Much appreciated, Eric.
Absolutely. Thank you to the audience for all the great questions. We do these live discussions, same time, same place every week, streaming to all the platforms that you could possibly imagine. So thanks for joining wherever you're joining from today. We will edit this interview. We'll add content to it. We'll polish it up, and we will formally release it as a episode of the podcast called Transformation Ground Control. That's a podcast I host weekly. New episodes drop every Wednesday. So keep an eye out for this interview to show up soon on that podcast. And if you want to learn more about that podcast, just go to transformationgroundcontrol.com. You can also learn more about Third Stage Consulting Group and Lander Talent by reaching out to me. So feel free to DM me or contact with me. wherever you're listening or watching here today. I'd be happy to chat with you. So hope you'll have a great week, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Take care.